Hey, I'm Zarina Matcha, and you're watching The Rational Female. Intersectional feminism is the most popular branch of feminism right now in the mainstream Western world. While on paper, intersectional feminism sounds very good and positive, in many ways it's the worst sort of feminism, because it has directly led to the wokeness we are seeing all across the Western zeitgeist today. Many people don't really understand intersectional feminism and why it's so, for want of a better term, problematic. So in this video, I'm going to explain what intersectional feminism is and then break down everything that is wrong with it. So the idea of intersectionality was first coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989 and is most commonly associated with her and bell hooks. Intersectionality was all about looking at race, gender, class, and sex, and seeing how these identities intersect to form different hierarchies of oppression. Up until then, so from the 1800s until the 1980s, feminism was about examining the ways that women were, allegedly, oppressed by a patriarchal society, which, if you're aware, is a theory rooted in Marxism, as feminists, particularly second-wave feminists, based the idea of women as an oppressed social class from the Marxist concept of the proletariat being oppressed by the bourgeoisie. What intersectional feminism does is, instead of simply looking at women as an oppressed class, it breaks down the various ways in which people of multiple marginalized identities, such as women of color, trans people of color, gay people, etc., are oppressed under this white, male-dominated capitalist patriarchy that has dominated the world for the last 10,000 years or whatever time frame they give. The idea of intersectionality became very popular in academia from the 1990s and is part of the post-Frankfurt School cultural Marxist worldview that we see with other theories like social constructionism, deconstructionism, and critical race theory. This has inevitably led to much of the contemporary woke and social justice narratives that we are seeing today. So if you ever wonder why so many young people claim that they are oppressed or part of a marginalized identity, then Kimberly Crenshaw is the person to thank for that. Concepts like white privilege also originate from this body of ideas. What intersectionality does is it breaks down various social groups and examines their level of oppression through hierarchies. So if you're a white male, you're the most privileged, and if you're a black trans person, you're the least privileged, etc. Which brings me to my recently published novel Tic Tac Toe. Tic Tac Toe depicts a cultural Marxist dystopian society which effectively depicts a world where intersectional feminism is the governing ideology. Everybody in this society is categorized based on their race, gender, and sexuality, and has to wear a pronoun badge so that everyone can see what their preferred pronouns are. And there is a hierarchy of oppression stuck up in every public place, which you will see on page 33, and you'll bet that people's level of privilege affects things like where they're able to live and how late they are able to stay out. I really thought about what the logical conclusion of all this feminist, Marxist, intersectionalist, woke stuff would be, and thus here we have it here in printed form. If you're interested, do check out the trailer up in the cards or in the description below. Purchase links are also in the description box. So, what is wrong with intersectional feminism? First of all, intersectional feminism and intersectionality in general is incredibly racist, not to mention sexist, but then all feminism is built on sexism. It's largely based on the demonization of white people as an entire racial group. It's become very socially acceptable to slur and put down white people. Even I myself has done this a few times, and we must ask ourselves, why is this acceptable? It shouldn't be acceptable to slur any racial group. We don't want to demonize black people, Asian people, or Latino people, so why should we demonize white people? Intersectionality claims that all white people hold systemic privilege over every single racial group by virtue of being born white. Yet this is absolutely untrue. Being white does not instantly make you privileged. White covers people from all European and Anglophonic countries, and there are so many different groups of white people who have suffered severe levels of hatred and demonization. For example, the Irish have endured heavy racism and hatred historically going back centuries. Approximately 1 million white Christians were captured and enslaved by Arab Muslim pirates around the same time that the African American slave trade went on. Some 100 million white Eastern Europeans were murdered during the brutal Stalinist regime, while modern Western influencers like ContraPoints are happy to sing the praises of Marxism. Being white does not automatically make you privileged, and we must stop this demonization of white people. It's extremely racist. You're literally vilifying someone for the color of their skin. White people as an entire racial group have been horrendously vilified for years now and are constantly being held responsible for all the evils committed in this world. Yet most of the evils committed in this world are done by a very small group of people who hold most of the power. It doesn't matter whether they are white or black or whatever. What matters is that they are the minority. It was a minority of people who were the colonizers, the imperialists, and the slave traders. And during the British Empire, most of the English people would have been peasants. They weren't the ones responsible for the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, imperialism, and the like. Furthermore, white people are not the only people who have been colonizers and imperialists. The ancient Egyptian empire was one of the world's largest empires, and they had slaves. Slavery and imperialism have been practiced by pretty much every racial group throughout human history. To say that this is a white-only thing is not only highly racist, it's historically inaccurate. Intersectionality is equally incredibly racist towards people of color. It constantly undermines black and brown people by insisting that we are all oppressed. This creates a victim mindset rather than a growth mindset. It's one of the largest problems with feminism as well, and intersectionality has taken the terrible victim mentality of feminism, which pits males and females against each other, and translated this to pit white people against black people, straight people against gay people, trans people against everybody else, etc. To assume that me having brown skin makes me marginalized is horribly racist. You are looking at me through a political lens rather than as a human being. My ethnic heritage is not something that makes me a victim. It's something that I am proud of. We should be teaching black and brown people to love their heritage and be proud of it. Not saying that you're a victim and you're demonized by all of these horrible white people. Equally, we should also allow for white people to have pride in their ethnic heritage and their racial group. Being proud of your country and ethnic background is the opposite of racism. It's part of what we are. If black people can have black pride, why can't white people have white pride? This is not racism. It's just being proud of your ethnic group. I think this is especially true in America, where there is so much pitting of racial groups against one another. I do think that African Americans would really benefit from some sort of pro-black movement that wasn't anti-white or rooted in a hatred and demonization of white people. We need to flip the table from viewing ourselves as victims to being proud of what we are. It's why I think we need a pro-female empowerment movement, which I have a subreddit for called Women's Advocates, not a feminist movement. The more we see ourselves as victims, the less power we have. But when we look at ourselves as people with agency, we can reclaim our power and turn everything to our advantage. This is why capitalism works so well. Capitalism, when used with social safety nets, gives people the power to make their own money and start their own businesses. Again, we should be celebrating and encouraging this, rather than telling everybody that they are oppressed. We should strive to have a real meritocratic free market, not some awful corporate-owned market. It's especially ridiculous to tell middle-class Westerners, who make up the majority of the woke brigade, that they are oppressed when they all have much easier lives compared to 80% of the world. Which brings me to my next point. Intersectional feminism does not empower women. Obviously, I don't think that any form of feminism empowers women, but intersectional feminism is probably the absolute worst at this. By pitting people into these divisive categories, all we are doing is claiming victimhood rather than taking control of our lives. Intersectional feminism goes one step further than classic feminism, for want of a better word, by further dividing women into multiple categories. We're now telling women, you're not just oppressed because you're female, you're oppressed because you're a black lesbian female. I have a novel called Anne, where the main character is a black lesbian female. She's not oppressed. In fact, her being a lesbian is such a small part of the story. Telling a gay woman of color who lives in a first world country that she is oppressed is the exact opposite of empowerment. All you are doing is making her angry and giving her a chip on her shoulder. We should be telling women, and men as well, that you can do anything you put your mind to. That's how I was brought up, and I can't understand why so many people want to live with this awful oppression victim mindset. But that aside, intersectional feminism is now contributing to the erasure of women. It's the intersectional feminists who are pushing this extreme transgender ideology onto the rest of society by now saying that anyone can identify as a woman. Now, I have no personal issue with someone who has been diagnosed with gender dysphoria and wants to take hormones to live and present as their preferred sex because they have a legitimate medical condition. That's fine. Grown adults have every right to do that. What I and most who criticize transgender ideology take issue with is allowing predatory men who pretend to be women to enter female spaces such as prisons, public bathrooms, and changing rooms. Nobody should be supporting this. Female spaces are female spaces. There is no excuse for allowing someone who clearly is not a female to enter a female-only space. Again, it's different if somebody has been diagnosed with gender dysphoria and has already gone through or is going through their process of reassignment surgery. But someone who appropriates the female identity to then use it for predatory purposes should not be endorsed by anybody. Not to mention, we absolutely should not be encouraging children to be confused about their gender identity. No one should be endorsing transgender ideology onto children. This is literally child abuse. And yet, this is what intersectional feminism is pushing. They are lobbying for women to be called people who menstruate, birthing people, egg producers, people with a uterus, and so on. This is appalling. What's rather ironic, of course, is that the feminist movement was all about attacking gender roles and saying that we should liberate women from gender roles, which would inevitably lead to a sex-neutral society, which Phyllis Schlafly was speaking about back in the 1970s when she was protesting against the Equal Rights Amendment. It is rather funny when modern feminists complain about the erasure of women, because after all, it is your movement that started this, ladies. You wanted to get rid of gender roles, i.e. the roles of males and females, and now you're succeeding in creating that gender-neutral society. You said that men are oppressors and women are oppressed, and that the solution to this would be to liberate everybody from gender. And now it's working, with an entire generation of young people calling themselves non-binary. Happy, happy times for all, eh? 90% of the world, more like 98%, knows that there is only male and female. Most people don't have a problem with legitimate transsexuals as long as they're not pushing it onto the rest of society. But we don't want to excuse predators, we don't want to change language, and we don't want to give children puberty blockers. This should all be common sense. None of what I'm saying is right-wing, conservative, or far-right. It's purely common sense. When you erase males and females, you ultimately lead to the destruction and annihilation of the human race. And that's what their end goal is, really, to destroy humanity and merge us all with machines, creating transhumans. All hail the god of artificial intelligence. Thirdly, intersectional feminism diminishes group identity. This ties in with what I mentioned previously. Instead of looking at individual groups separately and examining their needs, intersectionality pushes for everything to be mixed together or to intersect. Instead of looking at women's issues, trans women's issues, black people's issues, men's issues, etc., intersectionality wants everything to be viewed from this one hierarchical lens that just mixes everyone's problems together in one big pot. Humans are tribal. We fundamentally protect and prioritize our own interests. White people should be able to examine their struggles. Black people should be able to examine their struggles. Trans women should be able to examine their struggles. Women should be able to examine their struggles, etc. When we try and group everyone's problems together, we don't end up with real solutions. We end up with confusion. This is a similar problem to multiculturalism. Blending everything together doesn't allow for the strength of one thing. There's a reason why many don't recommend multitasking, or why it's often better to focus on one thing at a time. If I create a space for women, and I say that this is focusing on biological females, not trans females, that is not trans exclusionary. If I create a black-only space, it is not white exclusionary. The other group can create their own group and look at their issues, but I want to focus on this group and their issues. We can't solve problems and look at where legitimate injustice is being served if we keep on trying to mix everything together. There's a reason why there is a men's rights movement. They are focusing on men's issues. Many of them have male-only spaces to focus on men's problems. I think we need a women's movement to look at women's legitimate issues and to actually empower women without it being a feminist space. It's high time pro-female stopped being synonymous with pro-feminist. I am not the same as a trans woman. I was born a woman. I have ovaries and a uterus and the ability to bear children. A trans woman does not. A trans woman is a man who is suffering from a mental disorder and is now living and presenting as a woman to the best of their ability as a result of this disorder. We might be similar, but we are not the same. We're part of two different groups. We can't solve problems through intersecting our problems. We solve them by looking at them separately. Finally, intersectionality diminishes our humanity. We become obsessed with looking at people through superficial lenses rather than as human beings. When we reduce everybody down to their race, gender, and sexuality, we lose the most important facet of a person. That is the content of their character. Now, I don't advocate being colorblind. Obviously, we all see color and we all see gender. There are certain traits that black people have in common, that women have in common, that gay men have in common, etc. These are perfectly normal. But on a human level, we should be focusing on the person, not on how this identity marginalizes them. There is currently something in the literary world known as sensitivity readers, and I really hope that this awful idea dies out within the next few years, because it might actually end up destroying literature. Sensitivity readers are professional editors hired to vet somebody's manuscript to check that the character has not been written offensively. Unfortunately, many writers don't understand the political motivation behind this, and so blindly accept this as a positive thing. Yet it's actually one of the worst things that could happen in literature because of what it could potentially lead to. This is the beginning of censorship. Telling a white author who has written a black character that they need to make sure that the black character is not being stereotyped or written offensively is incredibly antithetical to the creative process. Not to mention, it again reduces that black character down to simply being a black person. Suddenly, I haven't written about Anne, I've written about a black girl. Anne is a girl who happens to be black and a lesbian, not the other way around. What matters most is her personality, her background, and her interests. I don't wish to erase anybody's culture or sexuality. I would even argue that intersectionality is contributing to the erasure of culture and sexuality, because it's turning people's race, gender, and sexuality into a political tool, rather than something that is part of a person. This is incredibly unfair and just ends up hurting people in the end. We can't possibly have a united, caring world if all we do is pit people against each other. And that's exactly what ideas like intersectionality, critical race theory, and all forms of cultural Marxism do. It's about creating divisions between people, making people more racist, sexist, and the like, rather than increasing empathy between human beings. There's really nothing positive that I can see about intersectionality, beyond wanting to pit groups against each other, blame everything on the horrible white man, and just give more ammo to privileged, spoiled woke kids who wish to claim victimhood rather than empower themselves. I'm 26. I'm a published author, and I also happen to be a mixed-race woman. I have never held culturally Marxist views, and I am tired of this small group of people constantly speaking on my behalf and assuming that I am oppressed. This is bullshit. I wish to celebrate ethnicity rather than see it erased. Isn't everyone tired of all this fighting by now? Woke this, anti-woke that, it's all terrible. Why can't we all just learn to get along and respect each other and stop with all this silly nonsense, this feminism, wokeism, that wing, right wing, left wing, it's all really just a bunch of nonsense. We need something else. I vote for humanitarianism, respecting people, respecting cultures, respecting men and women, and not telling people that the color of your skin or what's between your legs makes you oppressed or privileged. But what are your thoughts? Do you think that intersectional feminism is a bunch of nonsense, or do you think intersectionality is a great idea and it's brilliant and it's gonna save the world and whatever they think it is? Do let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe, and please don't kill anyone. Have a lovely day.